Genesis chapter 42, and I'm reading the first 26 verses, so 1 to 26. Genesis chapter 42. If you have a guest Bible, it is on page 37. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you keep looking at each other? Listen," he went on, "I have heard there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us so that we will live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he thought something might happen to him. The sons of Israel were among those who came to buy grain, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Joseph was in charge of the country. He sold grain to all its people. His brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke harshly to them. "Where do you come from?" he asked. "From the land of Canaan to buy food," they replied. Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Joseph remembered his dreams about them, and he said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the weakness of the land." "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food," they said. "We are all sons of one man. We are honest. Your servants are not spies." "No," he said to them, "you have come to see the weakness of the land." But they replied, "We, your servants, were 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no longer living." Then Joseph said to them, "I have spoken. You are spies. This is how you will be tested. As surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your brother comes here. Send one from among you to get your brother. The rest of you will be imprisoned so that your words can be tested to see if they are true. If they are not, as surely as Pharaoh lives, you are spies." So Joseph imprisoned them together for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Joseph said to them, "I fear God. Do this, and you will live. If you are honest, let one of you be confined to the guardhouse, while the rest of you go and take grain to relieve the hunger of your households. Bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words can be confirmed. Then you won't die." And they consented to this. Then they said to each other, "Obviously we are being punished for what we did to our brother. We saw his deep distress when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. That is why this trouble has come to us." But Reuben replied, "Didn't I tell you not to harm the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must account for his blood." They did not realize that Joseph understood them, since there was an interpreter between them. He turned away from them and wept. When he turned back and spoke to them, he took Simeon from them and had him bound before their eyes. Joseph then gave orders to fill their containers with grain, return each man's silver to a sack, and give them provisions for their journey. This order was carried out. They loaded the grain on their donkeys and left there.
Morena, everyone. Thanks, Francel, for reading. I've got a riddle for you this morning. Who likes riddles? You're going to get one. You have to guess what it is, all right? I feel your every move, and I know your every thought. I am with you from birth, and I'll see you to your last breath. I will praise you when you do right and punish you when you do wrong. What am I? It's the conscience. It's the conscience. Lord Byron, the British poet, called the conscience the oracle of God. It's a pity he didn't listen to it. And Friedrich Nietzsche called it the tyrant that is in us. The conscience is one of your most important assets, actually. It's a gift from God to every human being, not just Christians. Everybody has a conscience. Like pain that warns you when you're hurting your body, your conscience warns you when you're hurting your soul. The conscience is not infallible. That is, it can be faulty at times. It's not the voice of God, but the voice of God can speak to it. It can only hold you to the standard that you already know, that you've come to understand, whatever that standard might be. The higher the perceived standard for you, the more your conscience is going to hold you to that. And so in that respect, all of our consciences work a little bit differently. There's similarities, to be sure, but they work very differently, which is why we have different convictions as Christians. If you think of the conscience like a skylight, a skylight doesn't produce its own light. It allows light to pass through it, and it's only as effective as the much light it's exposed to. Okay? Or think of it as like a traffic light, where it goes green, orange, and red. Right? Now, you can run a red light if you want to, but you know you're going to be doing wrong, and you'll be hoping the boys in blue aren't watching. Yeah? Well, in our passage today, we see the persistent power of a guilty conscience at work. Nagging at the soul, awakening the soul to its error. And its effect, in this case on Joseph's brothers, as you've seen and heard, the effects are overwhelming. And it's God's way of awakening them to their sin. It's God's way of awakening us as well. Now, last week we saw Joseph as a prisoner in Egypt, right? And then we saw him catapulted overnight to this position, the highest position beneath Pharaoh. He was answerable to no one except for Pharaoh. And he was there to take charge of Egypt through the time of these 7 years of great abundance and then 7 years of famine, which were revealed through Pharaoh's dreams that Joseph interpreted. Okay, so 7 years of great abundance followed, just as God had shown Pharaoh. And Joseph, through his wise administration, orders that huge storehouses of grain are stored up in all of the cities of Egypt. He built vast kind of granaries for grain for them to be stored in. And then came the 7 years of famine. And the effects of these were absolutely devastating, not only for Egypt, but for all the surrounding land, which includes the land of Canaan, okay? So meanwhile, back in Canaan, Jacob and the 11 sons, right, minus Joseph, are there, and they are slowly starving. They really are. And this famine is going to kill them. It is drastic, and it's come to a place or a point of kind of a pinnacle for them. And we read that in verse 1 of 42. Jacob, the dad, says to his sons, "Why do you keep looking at each other? Listen, I've heard there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us that we will live and not die." Why are they all looking at each other? Because they already know this. They don't want to go there. Egypt is a memory for them they want to forget. Because they know that's where their brother that they done in and betrayed and sold has gone to. And who knows what's become of them in their minds, right? Become of him, sorry. And so hearing this word Egypt, there's feelings of dread within them. It's 20 years since they've done this dastardly deed, and it's like a fresh as day for them because their conscience is now stricken. So they've got no option, though. It's either Egypt or they die. And so we find out there in verse 3, they head off. 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt, but Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he thought something might happen to him. Now, why would he think that? I mean, Egypt, there's lots of people going there to Egypt to get the grain. It's not like it's a especially dangerous place. He's got his 10 older brothers with him to guard him. I mean, he'd be safe with them, won't he? Or won't he? And I think at this point, we'll just put pause on the story, step back and see the greater picture of what's going on here, the story so far, and what God is intending to do for this very broken family. And it is quite broken. God made a promise to Abraham that he would restore sinful humanity, bless all of humankind through him, and he would be a father of many peoples, and that many peoples would become a nation who would then bless the world. How? Of course, the Messiah would come through the nation Israel, Christ, as we know today, right? Well, there's two problems with that plan that God has at this point. One is an external problem, which is the easier one, and that's the famine. The famine will wipe them out unless they are fed, cared for, provided for. Because you see, if the famine wipes out this family, then you've got no descendants. If you've got no descendants, you've got no nation of Israel. If you've got no nation, you've got no Messiah. With no Messiah, you've got no salvation offered to all of the world, and we wouldn't be here, gathered here today, enjoying the benefits and blessings of what Jesus has done for us. Yeah. So there's the first problem, the external one. The second problem is much more difficult, and it's an internal problem. This family is intent on destroying itself. I mean, honestly. Favoritism has played a part right from its beginning. There's been problems with Abraham. Then there's problems with Isaac because he favored Esau, and then the wife Rebecca favored Jacob, and so you had this sort of, tussle between these two brothers, and you remember that story and how that went, and Jacob has to flee because his brother's going to murder him. And you'd think Jacob would learn something by all of that. Favoritism's not a good idea. But he doesn't. He doesn't, because he favors his wife Rachel over Leah, and then he favors Joseph over the other sons. Joseph barely escapes murder by becoming a slave in Egypt. The family is splintered, right, at this point. One set of grandchildren is now growing up in Egypt, learning Egyptian, and the other is growing up being thoroughly Canaanite. Now, I want you to jump now. This is the situation. You've got a broken, splintered family that needs healing, if it's going to be of any use to God for a nation that's going to bless the world, okay? And so let's jump to the end of chapter 42 here, and we'll come back and pick up the pieces in a minute, because I want you to see this interaction between the sons and the father, and just there's a lot of problems here. Here we've got Jacob's sons returning from Egypt. They come back with food, which they got from Joseph, right? A ton of food and a whole lot of cash. Less one brother who's been in prison there. Okay, they line up and they report to their father, and they give a highly edited version of what actually happened. And it sounds all very clean cut, it sounds all very neat and tidy, but there's some bits missing here, and you'll notice it. Chapter 42, verses 30 to 34. This is what they say to their father Jacob. The man who is Lord of the country spoke harshly to us and accused us of spying on the country. But we told him we are honest and not spies. We were 12 brothers, sons of the same father. One is no longer living, and the youngest is now with our father in the land of Canaan. The man who was Lord of the country said to us, "This is how I know if you're honest. Leave one brother with me. Take food to relieve the hunger of your households and go. Bring back your youngest brother to me, and I will know that you are not spies but honest men. I will then give your brother back to you, and you can trade in the country." Now, there's some things that are a bit dodgy here. They invent some trading contracts. They leave out the 3 days that they were put in prison. They leave out the fact that they left Egypt with their brother Simeon being bound before their eyes. And they leave out another very, very important fact, and you'd have to read the rest of the chapter to see it, but on the way home, one of them opens their sack, and behold, the silver that was to pay for all of this food is back in the sack. And they are just horrified. How did that get there? Right? And while they're spinning this sort of story to their father, the other brothers, they open their sacks and empty them, and behold, there's 9 more piles of silver fall on the ground. And we read in verse 35, when they and their father saw their bags of silver, they were afraid. Now, I've always wondered about this. I wondered if you've wondered too. What is going on? What's the deal with And it was Joseph who did it. He ordered that the silver be put back into all of their sacks. What's going on here? Why did he do that? And why is this such a big thing that's happened right here at this point? And I was reading some various commentaries and things, and then it was revealed to me, and it comes in Jacob's response in verse 36. It's quite telling. Their father Jacob said to them, "It's me that you make childless. Joseph is gone, Simeon is now gone, and now you want to take Benjamin. Everything happens to me." The piles of silver on the ground, right, plus these words of Jacob reveal that he highly distrusts these brutal sons of his. He connects the disappearance of Simeon, or Simeon being enslaved, with the disappearance of Joseph in money. He's joining the dots. He's going, let me see here. Last time you guys all went camping, you came back less one of my sons, and come to think of it, a pile of cash in your pockets. That's when they sold them to the traders. And looky here. What have we got happening again? What have you done with Simeon? And at this point, you can imagine the brothers, they're kind of like, they're up to their eyeballs in lies at this point, and they're probably trying to cover their tracks, and you can imagine them wanting to say, no, you got it all wrong, Dad. Last time we did sell one of your sons, but this time we didn't. And then Reuben, he pipes up in verse 37, "I'll get your son back to you, and if I don't, you can kill two of mine." How's that for a deal? I mean, only in this family would have this sort of thing going on, right? Where knocking off two of the grandkids is going to somehow please granddad, make him feel better. And Jacob's no better. Oh, it's just awful. Look at verse 38. He says, "My son will not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left. There's only one son in my family I regard as a son. I don't care about the rest of you." What a father. What a family. What a horrible, dysfunctional family. And this is going to be God's hope for the world. Overcoming the famine, that's going to be a pushover for God. Dealing with this lot, wow. Turning this family into a peaceful, loving, united family of God is going to be quite another, isn't it? Isn't it just as well we don't have things like this happening in the family of God today? You know what the greatest threat to the church, any church, the body of Christ, and it's, of course, it has its little facets all around this country and around the world. The greatest threat to the church, it's not external. It's not persecution necessarily, although that is a threat in some countries. It's not the government trying to stamp out Christianity. That does happen in some parts of the world. It doesn't happen in this part of the world. It's not atheism or liberalism, those horrible enemies of ours, right? Consumerism and all the rest of it. The biggest threat to the church is the same as it was in the book of Genesis. It's internal. It's the hearts of God's people when they go wrong. And God, even now, today, is trying to make a people, a holy people of his own, right? Of individuals who, sadly, sometimes continually compete, envy, fight with one another, and deceive one another. And you might be thinking here today, oh, you really shouldn't say that because there might be someone here wanting to become a Christian. I really do hope there's someone who wants to become a Christian. I really, really sincerely do. But there's a reason why these stories are put in the Bible for us. They're not to tell us how wonderful we are as God's people. That's not the point. And like I said last week, the point is not we put ourselves in the story and we all want to be Joseph. We all want to be the hero. This is to tell us what human nature is actually really like. This is the way that we are. The church is full of sinners. Yes, redeemed sinners. Yes, forgiven sinners. Sinners that are graciously experienced the grace of God, but they're still sinners all the same. And God has entrusted to us, the people of God, this plan to rescue the world, which is absolutely mind-boggling to me. Unless God has an answer to the internal problems right here and all around the world, right? We're finished. There's got to be an answer to this. Well, let's get back to the story, and we'll see this unfold. Joseph is able to save his brothers from the external threat. Yes, he can supply them with food from the storehouses that he's laid up in Egypt. That's the easy part. The harder part is saving the brothers from themselves, saving them from destroying each other. And we'll see that he's actually able to do this as well, by God's help, of course. You see. And Joseph is a picture of someone else we're going to be pointing to, right? You can see where this is going. Okay? They all come before Joseph. We're tracking back now to chapter 42, right? They come before him. This is the first time they meet him. They don't know it's Joseph. And we read in verse 6, and you would have picked this up in the reading. This is chapter 42, backtracking. Verse 6, his brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the ground. Now, this is very significant. It's significant because years earlier, Joseph had the dream. This is how the story began. And in Genesis 37, he dreamed that his brothers and his father and his mother would be all bowing down to him, right? And you know how they answered that when he told them their dream? They mocked him. They ridiculed him. They said, "You pipsqueak, you think we're going to bow down to you? Forget it. We've got something else. There's something for you coming." Right? But now look. Look at things now. Joseph's dreams are in fact fulfilled. But he takes no delight in it. It's not like he's rubbing his hands and going, "It's my turn now, boys. I'm going to enjoy watching you squirm." No, it's not like that. No. Because he's not that kind of king. He's not that kind of king. He is the master and they are his servants, but he's not that kind of king. Now watch and see, as we see this unfold, how the extraordinary way he uses his power, which is really unlimited, really, in this day. He could have done anything he wanted with them. He could have had them thrown in prison and kept there. He could have had them beaten. He could have them killed at his order. But watch how he uses his power to serve them. He begins by treating them harshly and accusing them of being spies. They respond in verse 10. "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest. Your servants are not spies." Well, the first part of their statement is true. The second isn't. They're not honest men because they sold off their brother and then they lied to their father about it and they've never come clean about it. And Joseph knows it. Joseph knows that. He wants them to come out in the open. And you see that, I think it's good for us to see deception involves not only what we say, it also involves what we don't say. The brothers have not said things to their dad. They should. But they should have. And I think the deception in that way of things we don't say, we cover up, it can be the more secret, hidden sort. So he tells them he doesn't believe them, and he puts them in prison for a few days. And so here we've got, just think about the picture here, we've got the 10 brothers, right, because Benji's still at home, imprisoned unjustly, right, because they've come honestly with money, in Egypt, just like who was imprisoned unjustly? Like Joseph. And it's just to give them a few days to think about things. And then he makes them another offer. When they come out of prison, gives them a different offer. And he says, "Okay, what we'll do here is just to test you guys, we're going to bind one of you, keep him in prison. The rest of you go back, and you bring this other brother back, and then I'll know that you're telling the truth." Right? And so they are watching in front of their eyes as Simeon is bound and taken off to prison. And just the recollection is just so real for them, right? And this is the turning point in the chapter. Right here, you get to verse 21. For the first time, we're given an indication of what's going on in their hearts. Their hearts are revealed at this point, and they come out with it. Verse 21, obviously, they say, "We are being punished for what we did to our brother. We saw his deep distress when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen, and that is why this trouble has come to us." And we actually get some more information on what actually happened here. Joseph pleaded for his life. as they tossed them into that pit. He pleaded. But they wouldn't listen. And now they've come to the conclusion that they're paying the consequences for what happened. And I would say it was a pretty accurate conclusion. And then Reuben in verse 22 says, "Didn't I tell you not to harm the boy, but you wouldn't listen? Now we must account for his blood." The ESV translates this, "So now there comes a reckoning for his blood." It's the reckoning. The brothers, pricked by their consciences, come out in the open. They reveal their hearts. And Joseph, in the very next few verses, reveals his heart. Because the brothers don't know who he is. They don't know he understands Hebrew perfectly. He doesn't need the interpreter between them. And he hears every word. And it says that he turned away and he wept. Now, why would he do that? Why would Joseph weep at this point? You know, if we were in the shoes, we're like, "Oh, this is just so good. We're just wringing the juice out of this one. It is so good to see people who have hurt me in pain." It's a human nature. Not Joseph. He wept. He's weeping for them. He's weeping for them. And this is not the only time it happens. All the way through the next few chapters, Joseph comes so close to blowing his cover because the tears don't stop flowing as he sees the hearts of these brothers slowly change. What a king. What a deliverer. Wouldn't you like a deliverer like that? A savior like that? This is God's heart. This is God's heart at work. These are men who have, let's just think about this. They've cornered Joseph when he was on his own, completely unarmed, out on the field, cornered him. I don't know if they had to go at him and punched him up a little bit, roughed him up, tore his cloak off, and threatened to kill him, and threw him in a pit and sold him off. This is your brother, sold him off to some traders heading off to Egypt. This is God's heart for him, for them. This is the heart of Joseph. He's operating as God does with us, to wound us in order to heal us. It's a heart that loves deeply enough to cause us to weep so that we see what we have done to our God and to our Savior on that cross, and it would cause us to bring us to repentance. And I would add here, unless you have come to a point individually in your life somewhere that you know that beautiful man who went on that cross went in there with the nails that you drove in there, you don't understand the gospel. You don't understand Christianity yet. You'll need some more time until you can say, "I am the woman, I am the man." All right? And God will bring us, God willing, bring all of us to that point where we are absolutely stricken. Well, chapter 43 opens with the family running out of food. Again, Simeon's back in Egypt, still in prison. Jacob's not going to let Benjamin go by any stretch. This is not happening, but they are starting to starve again. And so really he has no choice. He has to do something. He has to make the decision, right? And he says, "Go back." Verse 2, "Go back and buy us a little food." They say, you can't, the man said, "We can't go back unless you bring your younger brother." And Jacob finally relents and says, "Well, so be it." Right? And then Judah pipes in. And this is good too. Here's another telling point. I think Jeff pointed to this, what's going to happen. Watch what happens with Judah. Judah the scumbag. This is the guy that was an absolute moral mess back in chapter 38. with the whole daughter-in-law sleeping, the whole thing there. Yeah, right? Okay, listen to this. This is good. Then Judah said to his father, send the boy with me. We will be on our way that we may live and not die, neither we nor you nor our dependents. I will be responsible for him. Oh, this is a step up. You can hold me personally accountable. Whoa. Now the leader's stepping up. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, I will be guilty before you forever. So he's basically putting a curse upon himself if he doesn't get this done. This is leadership. This is so refreshing. This is a transformed man right here. The brothers are changing. What an encouragement. So they go back to Egypt with double the money. And Joseph sees his younger brother Benjamin. He's so overwhelmed. Again, he has to run out of the room. We see that in verse 30. He finally regains composure. He cleans himself up because, he's Egyptian. He'll be in his royal garb, shaved, because all the Egyptians shaved, whereas the Hebrews, where these guys would all have their beards on. Perhaps I don't know how they did up their faces, but there's indications that, they looked really, really striking, almost looked like gods. And so crying and weeping is going to mess all that up, and he has to go clean himself up and comes back out again. All right? And when he comes back out, he's arranged a meal with his brothers. It's a very, very special meal. And it is beautifully arranged on this table, and they're all seated. They've got seating positions, whether their names are there, I don't know, but they're seated perfectly from the oldest all the way down to the youngest, and they are astonished. Like what the heck? How does he know this? Right? And then, when they're served the food, Benjamin, the little pipsqueak, gets 5 more helpings than the others. Why? What's he doing? It's a test. It's a test. Will they do to Benjamin the favored brother as they did to him? Is this going to be another episode of just repeated, and we're going to see them deal to this kid on the way home? Big time. It's a test. Can they handle it when someone is blessed over them? Will they do the same to young Benji as they did to Joseph? Or have they learned from their errors? Have they changed? You're not going to know the answer until we come back next time. But wrapping up, I'd like us to bring it back just with a few little minutes I got here, which I think that is an important message here about the awakened conscience and how important it is, whoever you are today, that you treat your conscience well, listen to it, don't ignore it, inform it the best you can, because the day that you stop listening to your conscience is the day of judgment, really. And God will not be able to help you. We live in a world that just loves to shift blame. I don't know if you noticed this at all. It's amazing how clever and articulate people are, from the highest levels down to the bottom, of just shifting blame and passing the buck. And you know how refreshing it is and how seldom we see it that someone actually stands up publicly and says, it was me, I am to blame, or I'm responsible. It's my fault. How often do you hear those sort of words? It's so refreshing. It's so disarming. It's so refreshing because it's like, oh, of course. Now he sees it. We all see it. It's just not seen enough, eh? And our conscience, though, it doesn't matter if you shift the blame, pass the buck, do whatever you like, deny, your conscience won't leave you off the hook. It will continually nag you, it will prod you, it will prick you, and say, you are the one. And it will not give you comfort. There's a powerful story. I watched the movie version of it when I was a kid, and it absolutely terrified me. And I shouldn't have watched these horrible movies, because I really did. And that's probably why I've got still nightmares today. But anyway, it's Edgar Allan Poe's story, The Telltale Heart. Some of you familiar with the story? Oh, gee, you guys got to get some reading or some watching done. Okay, so this guy, he murders someone and then hides the body in this basement. And he can't help, he keeps thinking he's hearing the heartbeat of his victim, right? Thump, 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 just ringing in his ears. He doesn't realize it's actually his own heart, it's his own guilty conscience just pounding and pounding away. And he just about goes mad trying to find out where this noise is coming from, until he can't sleep, he's a mess, until he finally comes clean and confesses that he did it. It's an amazing story, and it's actually a powerful story about the conscience and the human condition, really. Right? The brothers' crime is now 2 decades old, and they still feel as if it was yesterday. They still feel the distress of it because they've never come clean. And you can almost imagine that in their eyes, their mind's eyes, the picture of their pleading brother, Joseph, at the bottom of the pit saying, guys, I'm your brother. Don't leave me. Don't do it. And they just turn away and walk home with the cash in their pockets. They didn't listen, and now their memory haunts them. They were not honest men. No, they weren't. They were guilty. And now they find themselves in trouble, big trouble, and their conscience reminds them of all those things they committed 20 years before. And they're absolutely undone. You and I, we would love to be like Joseph, but we're not. We are the brothers. We are the brothers. We are guilty sinners. And we do spend a lot of time, sadly, in self-deception. And yes, Christians can do this. We don't see ourselves accurately. We tell ourselves we're better than we really are. And what we really need is some people just to speak pretty straight to us. The Lord really will speak through others to talk straight to you. And that's why we need a king like Joseph, who will not only reveal who we really are, but will be gracious, tender, and compassionate enough to know how to deal with that and to be able to bring that to a healing. And God has given us such a king. That's the good news for today. God has given us such a king like Joseph. He is the answer to our internal problem. He is the answer really to every human problem, the big ones, the ones that really matter. And he's come to rescue us from ourselves. He exposes us so that he can help us. He wounds us so that he can heal us. And through his death and resurrection, he has made a way for that to be all repaired, healed, not just plastered over, but actually beautifully healed and made right so that we can have access to the Father. So don't repel this king as he comes near. Don't resist his voice into your conscience. And when your conscience pricks you, it nags you and goes, alarm, listen, okay, and guilt begins to rise, then draw near to this king and he will deal gently with you. And just like Joseph, he will open up for you. He will open up storehouses of treasure. Yeah, more than you will need. More than you will need. Out of his storehouse of grace and mercy and forgiveness, he'll fill your heart, he'll fill your life and send you home full when you came empty. And he'll do this again and again and again. He's a wonderful Savior. If you don't know him, you've got to get to know him. You've got to get to know this one. I'm going to invite our team to come up here, and they're going to close us in a song of worship and praise. And what an opportunity for us. Come up, team. Come up here. What an opportunity for us to be able to kind of finish up this way, directing our love towards Jesus, this beautiful King who has died for us. And as they do that, let me just pray for all of you, and really pray for myself too. Father in heaven, we just thank you. Lord, we thank you for this morning and for speaking to us through your word. And I just pray for those who are listening here today, and I pray for your help for them, Lord. And we're all saying before you, our Lord, we're honest men, we really are, but we're not. In truth, we're guilty. And we know, Lord, that it's only because of your mercy and your grace, Lord, that we have the